Wisconsin Vegetable Garden Radio Show with your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Tammi Hatung owns Desert Canyon Farm in Colorado. She is an author, educator, farmer, blogger, and more. The farm grows over 800 different varieties of plants.
Welcome to the program, Tammi.
Good morning. It's so nice to be with you folks.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy farm to join us on the program and educate Holly, myself, and all of our listeners with some of your garden wisdom and knowledge.
Well, we'll see.
Tell us more about your farm. You're going, you have 800 different varieties. Of what types of things do you grow, and did you start out with that size of a farm, or was it a progressive growth over a number of years?
Well, so we've been here now for 23 years, in 1996, and no, the farm started out much different. We started out field growing fresh medicinal herbs that we sent to extractors all over the United States and into the UK. And then as things progressed and shifted, we started growing potted plants, all different kinds of herbs. And eventually we added heirloom and heritage food plants to that. And now we do 1,800 different varieties of herbs, all different kinds of herbs, lots and lots of different kinds of heritage food plants, including fruit trees, heirloom varieties, as well as we have 64 different varieties of heirloom tomatoes alone and 38 varieties of basils. So we have a mix that's pretty diverse, including wildlife habitat plants and native plants. So the farm has evolved and changed for sure. We also grow perennial field crops of flower seeds, and those go to Germany, to Gelito Perennial Seed Company.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So you are a certified USDA organic farm. How does the farm get this certification, and what does it mean?
So we have been certified organic since day one, and that is different than how it's done now. When we began our certification, it was through the local Department of Agriculture, which is Colorado Department of Agriculture. And a few years back, actually several years back, USDA took over nationally the certification program for organic growers and processors and so forth. So the process now takes a minimum of 3 years from the time you apply to when you actually get your first certification certificate. So every year we have an annual inspection, and in fact we just had our inspection last week. They come, they check everything on the farm. They check our containers, our equipment, all of our crops. They look at the greenhouses and what they're constructed of, pretty much everything. And if you pass your inspection, then you get your new certificate for the coming year, and then you do it all over again the next year.
And so it's kind of like, a tedious process to get certified is kind of what it sounds like.
It is, but, the fact that USDA now owns the word organic, and you can't really use that word if you are commercially selling in any kind of print way or signage way unless you are certified. So it's the only way for people who are going to be your customers to really know that you are indeed organic and what that means. That means no GMOs. That means no synthetic chemicals of any sort, including fertilizers. It means that your seeds are clean and your soil is healthy and you have a conservation plan in place. The whole gamut.
when you say certified organic and no chemicals, you can still use what is called OMRI listed products, correct, to a certain degree, or what is the requirement? OMRI is the Organic Material Review Institute of products, indicating, from what I understand, that if it's listed on that, then you as an organic farmer are safe to use that on your crops. Is that correct?
That's pretty much correct. However, you still, every time you add a new product that you want to use, still have to get it approved through your certifying agent. So, for example, there are some vinegar herbicides, and vinegar is allowed as an herbicide. It's an OMRI-approved ingredient. But the certifying agent says that the fruit that's used to make that vinegar also has to be certified organic, or it doesn't count. So, there is that extra step of having your certifying agent sign off on anything that you use, even if it is an OMRI product. But for our home gardeners, if it has an OMRI seal on the label, that is a very good peace of mind indication for them that that item is safe to use for organic gardening.
Well, let's talk about pollinators for a moment. You're a pollinator-friendly farm. Why is it important? And to be that way, we are friendly to our pollinators. How can a home gardener be mindful of pollinators even in their normal backyard activities, whether they just have a lawn or actual garden?
Boy, pollinators are incredibly important. For example, all of our food chain, even animals that eat other animals, rely on pollinators in the long run, because some of those animals that are their prey eat food plants. So if the pollinators aren't doing their job, there's no seed and there's no ability for the plants to propagate themselves going forward into new generations. So that's very important in and of itself. And pollinators are having a hard time right now because there's a lot of habitat loss, there's a lot of chemical use that is deadly or toxic to pollinators and beneficial insects. For us here on the farm, it means that our seed crops are going to produce seed, and that's our livelihood. For anyone who's farming, whether they're growing tomatoes or apples or whatever, they need those pollinators to be pollinating their crops to increase their harvest. And that's true also for home gardeners. If you're a vegetable gardener, you need to have bumblebees and honeybees and native bees, wasps, pollinating your dill and your tomatoes, your squash, everything in your garden so that you get a good harvest. So even if you don't have a food garden, you still want to have pollinators around. And they are very diverse creatures. There's hummingbirds that are pollinators, beetles, there are butterflies, all sorts of bees, wasps, and even yellow jackets. They all have their pollinating jobs that they do, and that is important. So diversity in your plantings is critical because every one of those pollinators likes a different color or a different style of flower, a different shape of flower. So they all have their specific plants that they like to visit.
Okay, now we have a lot of issues. A lot of people have a lot of issues with growing lavender. We had some issues. We were 1 in 5, and one successful year out of 5 years. What are some great tips for growing lavender?
Well, growing lavender means you have to have a full sun location. That's first and foremost. And you need to have soil that drains well. So if you have soil that's very soggy, you're going to have a hard time growing lavender. If you're trying to grow it in a part shade or a shady spot, you're going to have a challenge growing lavender. Also, anything that has that silvery gray foliage doesn't like wood mulch and mulches around the base of the plant that are going to come in contact with the foliage. Why that is, I guess just because those kinds of mulches hold more moisture. So don't use straw, don't use wood mulch around the base or grass clippings around the base of your lavenders. It's better to use a gravel mulch or something of that sort. And if you have a soggy soil, look and see if you can find a better spot in your landscape to plant. And if you can't, then add some spacing agents like perlite or some fine little gravel, crushed gravel, into the soil in the spot where you're going to grow lavender so that it drains better. Those are the main things for growing lavender. The other thing I would tell people is don't cut your lavender back every year. You know, there's that tendency to want to clean up the garden and make it nice and tidy, and we trim things back and so on. But if you trim back your lavender, one, it's going to possibly shock the plant and it may die. But also, it's going to delay the bloom, and you won't have flowers as early in the season. So better to leave your past year's foliage, leave the flower stalks even if you want. The small birds like finches love the seed in the lavender stalks. But then you can, when the plant gets its new leaves, you just put on a pair of gardening gloves and gently rub the stems, and all of the previous year's dried foliage will just crumble off, and you'll have beautiful lavender.
Excellent tips there. A lot of people have a lot of fresh herbs to save and to use. Is there an ideal way to get the most out of them? If you're having a lot of basil or other oregano or other herbs, what's the best way to do that?
Well, many people dry their herbs, and that's definitely a good way to store your herbs, and it takes up a small amount of space. But I like to freeze them. It's easy to do. You just rinse them and shake off the excess water, put them into a freezer container, and then you're good to go. Whenever you need them, you just pull out a piece, whatever amount you want, from the freezer container, and while it's still frozen, you chop it or crumble it up into your food, whatever you're cooking, and it will give you the flavor of fresh herbs. It will also preserve all the vitamins and minerals that are in the herbs, which is very important. So that's one of the things that you can do. If you have basil, you can even puree it up, and there is that technique of pouring your puree into ice cube trays, freezing them, and then popping them out into a freezer container, and then you just pull out however many cubes you want. That works for other types of herbs too, thymes and sage and really anything. So that's a nice way to preserve it. If you want to get the most benefit from the plant, that's the next best thing to fresh. Now, drying certainly is a good way to do it too, but make sure that when your plants are fully dry, that you immediately put them into storage in a non-plastic, non-metal container, so glass jar or paper sack or box. That way the flavor doesn't change, the smell doesn't change, and the properties don't change in the plant if you're using it medicinally.
Well, Tammi, we greatly appreciate your time. Can tell us about your book, where to find it, and how we can find more about you.
Oh, well, you can find out all about us and what we're doing here at the farm at our website and my blog, which is desertcanyonfarm.wordpress.com. That's the best way. We're also on Facebook, but most of the information is on the website. You can find my books online. They're available in bookstores. So there's 3 of them, actually. There's Homegrown Herbs, The Wildlife-Friendly Vegetable Gardener, and Cattail Moonshine and Milkweed Medicine, which is the newest one.
Well, Tammi, we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us on the program and sharing some of your wisdom, which you have with Holly, myself, and all of our listeners.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.